right, welcome to a special edition of the Butter Notes podcast. It's just Jim and Jake today. We actually fired Tone because he's just too big a pleb. We were sick of his bullshit.
I just got tired of looking at him. He just physically disgusts me. So I just was like, we got to get rid of this guy. So we made it happen, and we're back to our roots now. Pretty happy about it.
Yeah, so hopefully it's better this way for y'all too. But honestly, it doesn't.
Oh, I know it will be.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's just so much better for us. But no, Tone's on vacation this week, so we're gonna take a crack here at something we've talked about doing for a little while. Jake and I fondly recall the year 2019 as being an especially good year for new releases, and it might be more that I remember it that way because I'm so shitty at keeping up with new releases. And there are so many from this particular year that have stuck with me for repeat listens. I don't know, Jake, what do you think about that? Do you think 2019 is actually a standout year?
I think it's a standout year for, this is a bit of an oxymoron, but like popular progressive bands. Like I went back and I looked over all the like music databases online and like checked what was going on in the preceding years and in 2020, 2021 and so on. And there's been a lot of great music that's come out in all of these years, but I think something that's like really cool for us is a lot of bands that we follow and have been following for a while. Some bigger name bands all seem to kind of put out albums around the same time, and that for that reason, I think that's why we remember it fondly. And I also think that for a few of these artists, they also ended up releasing some of our favorite albums from their discography. So I think it's another reason it left an impression on us. But obviously, like, I think in 2017 and 2018, I was in grad school, and I think I've mentioned in other episodes that my listening was like much more streamlined. It was for like listening while I was doing schoolwork and stuff like that, and so I kind of had like a fixed set of artists that I was listening to, and I wasn't really discovering music. And so I'd gotten out of school this year in 2019, and I was able to kind of just like re-engage with a bunch of new music that was coming out. So it was really exciting for that reason, but also because there's just a bunch of like, big artists that I had been following for a while. So I think that's part of the reason why. And obviously, if anyone knows our background and listening to this, is we skew heavily towards prog rock and prog metal. So when we talk about it being a great year for music, we're really talking about it being a great year for prog rock, prog metal, and so forth. While it was probably a great year for other genres as well, but that's mostly what we'll be talking about today.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, looking at this list here, it obviously skews in that direction.
It doesn't even just skew in that direction. Yeah. It's almost it's exclusively progressive music. Progressive rock. I mean,
it's not it's not exclusively like prog exactly.
Yeah.
Well, even then, shit. I mean,
if you ask a person who like tells you that their favorite music is progressive rock or progressive metal, and they keep up with new music, these will be some of the first artists they'll tell you that they like, would be my guess.
Yeah, I'd say with the exception of Kayo Dot.
Possibly. They're doing their own thing. They're not really in this scene.
Exactly.
So that's another thing. This is kind of like, we might call it a scene, right? Like these are bands from the scene, like at the forefront of progressive music, all on like major progressive labels and things like that.
Yeah.
So.
And some of them are even like, kind of buddies, it seems like. Looking at it here, we've got Dream Theater, Devin, Townsend, and Opeth. They occupy a pretty high tier in terms of major label prog metal artists.
And the Flower Kings too. There's some crossover there.
Periphery, Thank You Scientist, Bent Knee, Leprous. These are younger bands. Wilderun. These are younger bands who seem to be coming up at roughly the same speed.
Yeah.
Yeah. But part
of the new guard.
Jesus, it's definitely just a badass list of records.
And we got rid of a couple just because we didn't think they weren't as maybe prevalent. Like and there's another part of this I mentioned is that I heard all of these records. With the exception of one, I heard all of these records the year they came out. And then there's these other tabs here. We've got this spreadsheet where there's tons of other music, and I didn't listen to all of this stuff when it came out in 2019. Some of this stuff I listened to retroactively, but I thought I'd include nonetheless. But I think everything on this list, with the exception of one album I heard everything as it released.
There are I think it's just 2 on here. No, there are three albums on this list that I did not listen to in 2019. Veil of Imagination, Pitfalls, and
Resistance.
Resistance.
Right?
Yep. Yeah, but so we're gonna get started here chronologically. We just have these broken out by month. So first album on the list, rather fittingly, it would seem, Distance Over Time by Dream Theater. Which was a blessed return to form.
Well, I was going to say, I really wish we had done a 2016 episode, then we could start out by talking about The Astonishing, which would have been way more interesting. I think the fans would have wanted that more than talking about this.
Yeah, Jake, you're
transitional
actually,
record.
Jake's pretty deep into The Astonishing, man. You read the book.
I haven't read the book yet, but I've got it. I haven't read it yet. It's a little too heady for me, I think. I read the first couple pages. I read some dialogue, and it might just be a little too intellectual for me. So I'm kind of intimidated by it. But
yeah, I mean that's a 1 page at a time kind of book.
Yeah, you gotta really sit down and think about it. It's one of those. Yeah, it's one of those books. You gotta sit with it for a while.
I agree.
Yeah,
but no, Distance Over Time, man. That's actually a pretty fucking killer Dream Theater album. I don't think we're alone in suggesting that 2020 or 2010's Dream Theater is more hit or miss compared with the classic material.
Definitely share that assessment.
This is the peak of that era, I think.
Yeah, and it just squeaked in at the end of the decade. And I mean, era. They just released an album. That was last year, I guess. At this point, I feel like it's maybe been a year since it came out, or almost.
No,
I feel like
not yet.
I can't remember when it came out. Time is weird, man. But
I think September of last year was when it came out.
That still feels like forever ago. But they've been on something of a roll, I think. Yeah, to me. Okay, so I think Dream Theater. I think most people agree. After Systematic Chaos, there's kind of a bit of a decline, and this may or may not coincide with the departure of Mike Portnoy. In 2010, I guess he left, or 2009, right after Black Clouds and Silver Linings. Now, I'm a total Dream Theater fanboy, and I love all that stuff. I'll still listen to the self-titled, and I think Dramatic Turn of Events is actually a quite good record. I think that was maybe the best one in that period up until this time, but yeah, if I do a ranking of Dream Theater records, it's pretty much 2007 and back is going to populate the higher points in my list, I think, in general. But then you return to these to 2019, you got Distance Over Time, and then A View from the Top of the World, and those are actually a little higher than some of the older stuff. So I actually think these are really solid records. And part of this, I think, is John Petrucci just kind of went on a tear for about 2-3 years of this. So 2019 he dropped this, and then in 2020 he dropped he had that solo record, and then he did the Liquid Tension stuff, which was pristine. I think the dude just keeps getting better as a player.
Yeah, man, he's at the top of his game.
Yeah, and so I mean, he just collected a Grammy for one of his songs a few months ago, or a month ago, however long it was. So yeah, I thought this was really refreshing Dream Theater album. It wasn't. I don't like using the term, but The Astonishing was over long. It was too long. I appreciate the ambition for what they were trying to do, but I thought that this was a great return to form. I thought they focused on the songwriting more.
The rock opera is pretty much just a bad format, in my opinion. It's very, very rarely good.
That's probably true. It's always just maybe a little overindulgent, and it's too hard when you amass that much music and try to make a unified. It's really easy to get it wrong. So it's not a slight on the musicians. I think it might just be a hard thing to do well.
Yeah, and
a lot of it just misses the mark. I think Tone always mentions Tommy as an example of rock opera that works. But
that's the rock opera, Tommy.
Yeah, but even and I know some people love The Wall. I'm not the biggest fan of The Wall.
I am not in that camp either.
Yeah, I mean, I like it for what it's okay. It's okay. There's some great songs on there, but there's a couple other rock operas that I can't even remember now. I was thinking about this the other day. I was like, oh, that might be a counterexample, but I can't even think of it now. So in general, yeah, I think that's the case. But yeah, I think this was just a more well balanced band effort. I felt Mangini, the new drummer, well, I mean, he's been the drummer for more than 10 years now. I feel like this is really where he got settled in. I think I don't know. Yeah, My Young is all over this album. I thought he's like, well, to me, like the bass line in S2N that starts he just mixed really well into this album. It drives a lot of the rhythms, and yeah, it was just a really refreshing album from Dream Theater. And we got one that was in a lot of ways similar to it with his last one, and I'm just kind of excited for what they might do next.
Yeah, same here. I mean, there's some really good shit on this one. Lots of really heavy moments, like in Paralyzed and Fall into the Light.
Pale Blue Dot's pretty heavy at times. Barstool Warrior is not super heavy, but it's got this like 90s vibe going on in it. I think like 90s glam kind of vibe going on in the. I don't know. I think of like Fish Marillion, like that, like I don't know, that kind of aesthetic, or like Lady Nina kind of. It's like an old, like tired boomer going to drink in his favorite bar, and he's older than everyone else, kind of something like that. And then Viper King is an excellent bonus track. Like shout out to homage to John Lord and Deep Purple.
Yeah, their Deep Purple song.
Yeah,
I always
it's a
forget
really good
about
one. Yeah, all around solid record. I think I have it as like a 4 out of 5, and I think that's right where it needs to be, and it's super enjoyable, especially if you're a Dream Theater fan. And it was a breath of fresh air from what they were doing prior to that album.
Yeah, it was a fun way to start off the year too. The next record eclipses this one pretty intensely, at least for me. I think Jake too. So this is an album that seems like people don't love as much as we love, but Empath by Devin Townsend, which came out in March of 2019. I think this is Devin's best work. I think it's just got so much breadth and repeatability. Like I've listened to this so many times and I still find new shit every time. I love the Devin Townsend Wall of Sound production style. I love the collaborations on this album, like with Mike Keneally basically just kind of helping to direct the overall project, getting hooked up with Morgan Ogren, the drummer.
Chad Kroeger from Nickelback.
Chad Kroeger.
They're buds, man. It's really cool.
Yeah, well, I guess the story...
Chad Kroeger's based, man. He's a cool dude.
I guess the story was that they're both from Vancouver, and I guess Devin Townsend used to talk some shit about Nickelback, and then he met Chad Kroeger, and he's like, oh, you know what? You're actually a pretty cool guy.
Well, Devin was like, he had some anxiety about releasing this album. He was like, I don't know, there was something about him. There's like a video of him at like a guitar store, like doing a workshop or something, and he's just answering questions. And someone asked him about, how'd you meet up with Chad Kroeger from Nickelback, and why is he doing guest vocals on your new album? And I was like, I just talked a bunch of shit about them, and then he said he had a lot of anxiety, and he was like, maybe I should just write a pop record, like just something that'd be real, like radio friendly. And he apparently went to like Chad Kroeger's house, and he drove up, and it's just like a mansion, like the dude's got a lot of money, he's a rock star. And the guy like talked him through like his career, and like, this is what you do when people don't like your music anymore, and when you're booed off the stage in Portugal, or like something like that. Because people are brutal to Nickelback. I don't particularly care for their music, but it's one of those bands that people love to hate. Like, it's not fair to Nickelback. I don't think how people treat them. So this guy has like a lot of I guess he has a lot of experience handling this, and I guess he like counseled Devin Townsend and was like, you need to just go all out and write the record that you need to write at this time. And everything you said, to me, it's just a culmination of everything that he had worked on in his career. All of his influences, all of the styles that he's tried are on this album. You got the gospel stuff, you got the ambient stuff, you got the extreme, like Strapping Young Lad, extreme metal stuff.
There's new territory too, though. It's not just a sort of amalgam of everything else they ever did.
Yeah.
I think he sort of broke new ground in terms of his career.
Yeah, and so it's been insinuated by people in our camp that I'm upset that people don't like it as much as me. To me, it's I guess I don't understand if you don't like Devin Townsend's music. I could understand it because it is really eclectic and kind of chaotic, and I think that's a common complaint about the album. And it is that, but that to me is the essence of Devin Townsend. The dude's just a nut job and likes to make really wide open music. Um, but to me, it's not. I mean, I don't know. I think of like the Mighty Masturbator. That's a weird song. Like, there's all sorts of weird stuff going on, and the wall of sound stuff that people sometimes complain about. I thought it was less the case on this than on an album like Epicloud. There's some pretty soft moments, and the dynamic range is really good. It's not like he's just stuffing sound. There are moments where it just can like overwhelm your ears, but there's some really softer moments on this too, and just like the building of tension and stuff too. And yeah, I think it's his masterwork. I really do. I just see it as a culmination of everything he worked on. And that's not to denigrate any of his previous albums. I love, Biomech and all that stuff. But I don't know. I really think he just crushed it. And there's like a unifying theme. It's really positive and happy. This album actually helped me through a difficult time as well, just lyrically. Just really, really positive, but realistic at the same time. No, I think he crushed it, man. And I go back and listen to it, and it just Genesis just floors me. Hear Me floors me. Singularity floors me. Yeah, it was my album of the year, and I put this album with another one we'll be talking about in a bit. I think I mentioned. I said Devin, yeah, Empath's my favorite, and then there's this other one I said these I thought were game changer albums. I don't know if you remember when I texted you that, but I was like, yeah, these albums are game changers. Is what I said.
I don't remember, but I guess we'll get to it here shortly. Yeah, I mean, Empath is the top 3 album of the decade for me. Not that I paid sufficient attention, but I always come back to it. It's so fucking good.
Yeah. Amy Dorval's on it. Who's excellent musician.
Every moment of this album floors me, really. The whole thing is phenomenal.
Yeah, I think he crushes it, and yeah, I guess to me I respect if someone doesn't like it as much as his other work, but to me it just comes as a shock. I guess I was not really connected to what other people were doing when listening to this stuff. So when I came to and saw, I only recently joined Rate Your Music, so I really didn't know what kind of music other people listened to. So it was kind of a shock to me. I was like, oh wow, it's actually pretty low. And it was pretty lowly rated on Prog Archives too, which selects for progressive music fans. So it's not just the wider music nerd community. It's pretty strictly progressive music fans as well who are not as high on it. And I don't know. It was a little weird to see.
Yeah, it surprises me too. I would have expected more people to really go apeshit for this. There's so much going on.
Yeah. Well, and you see, if you go back, like there's a pretty steady drop off after let's see here. After Deconstruction and Addicted, and then after that you see this steady drop off. Snuggles got sent into the void. It's a 2.8, which was his ambient album, one of his ambient albums that he dropped last year, and the Puzzle's not much more highly rated. And I have a feeling people aren't going to like Lightwork as much if he kind of stays in this musical headspace. But I hope it's in the vein of Empath, because then it's going to be contender for my album of the year. So works for me. I hope he keeps on doing that, writing in that vein.
Yeah, same here. All right, then the next month, April 2019, we get Periphery 4, which I also love and come back to pretty often, especially a couple of tunes on there. I mean, this is pocket Periphery, man. They're really comfortable in their own skin at this point. The songwriting is really, really easy. Not like it's not complicated music, but I think the stuff just comes across very, very loosely in a good way.
It's slick. It's real slick.
Yeah, and the guys are just locked in. They also, this is the first time they put out a song that's over, well,
There's
How long
Race
is
Car on the
Reptile?
first
It's like
album.
16 minutes long, Reptile.
It's their longest track. Race
Yeah.
Car was like 12 or 13 minutes, I think, and then Omega is like 11 minutes.
Yeah,
Those are their longest
Omega's
tracks.
just over 10 or so. Yeah, so it's their longest track by a good stretch, and I think it carries the whole way through. It's great.
And it's the opener, which is wild.
Yeah. Fucking Spencer kills it on this album, man. I think this is his best sounding album by far.
I would agree. Well, singing wise, for sure. I think the screams. I think he does his best work on Periphery 3. That's a mean fucking album, Periphery 3, and it was cool. So this is another case where Periphery's like career trajectory. They have Periphery 1 and 2, where they're like, okay, well, we've talked about it in a previous episode about Periphery 1 and 2, like, you know, how they kind of formed as a band. And then they get to Juggernaut, and it's like this big project they did, which is like long double album concept record. And I think all the band, like, retrospectively were like, yeah, we had a horrible time recording that. And then with Periphery 3 and 4, they mentioned how, like, the writing and recording process was way more fun for them. And so it's like streamlined Periphery, but that's kind of what we want out of these guys, right? Like, they're such good players, and like, I don't know, it's Periphery to me is not a band like I love Juggernaut, and I like appreciate the hell out of those albums. I like they're some of my favorite stuff from the 2010s. But in some ways, like, yeah, it's cool to just watch them just, I don't know, just the wankery they do on their good, like, it's really, I don't know, that's why we listen to Periphery, right? It's the technical artistry, the production. And so in some ways, like, the more streamlined, like, tied down kind of composition in some ways is really cool to hear. And I think they've really settled into, and they feel much more, it feels like they were much more comfortable writing this. I think that's how you put it. Yeah. So
yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah, I love Periphery 4. Garden in the Bones, one of their best tracks, one of maybe Spencer's best track in the whole discography.
He fucking slays that song. It's ridiculous.
Crush is really cool.
I love Crush. That synth break in the middle of Crush is so much fun.
Yeah. And then Satellites, like another great closing track. Like you had Loon on the previous one, and then Satellites here, another great like emotional kind of crescendo at the end of the album. And the last part of this album, what's so cool about it, there's that sample. One of them just says "suck my balls," and then the album ends. And so that's just that's a Misha Mansour joke for sure. That has to be. He definitely influenced that decision.
Yeah, I got to shout out Blood Eagle too, which is just insanely brutal.
That means the song is mean. Yeah.
Oh my god.
The solo's mean. Like, yeah, lyrically.
And I love the pronunciation of the line, "the abandoned children of Christ."
Yeah.
You know the pronunciation I'm talking about?
Yeah, it's evil, man.
Fucking super evil, dude.
Did that
I love that.
Well, we can cut this if it's saying too much. But did that Blood Eagle inspire your one of your tracks that you're working on with your band in any way?
Probably. I mean, not intentionally, but probably.
Dude, the Viking shit's cool. Like,
yeah, we didn't write the lyrics to that song. Our buddy wrote them, and he's not a Periphery guy at all.
I remember back in the day when you guys were working on that, I was like, I could try writing some lyrics for it, and then you gave me like the theme you were going for, like Vikings, like raiding like Christian monasteries in England or something like that.
Yeah,
and
that would have been back in like 2018.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Fuck, that feels like a long time ago.
It was.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what to say about Periphery. Love the guys. My favorite prog metal boy band for sure.
Yeah, also my favorite prog metal boy band. But all right, next up, June 2019, we've got Terraformer by Thank You Scientist, which we actually just talked about in a recent episode that none of you will get to hear because Riverside fucked up and we lost the tracks. So
that's a tragedy. Yeah.
The Thank You Scientist episode, which we had a really good time recording, is it's in the winds, man.
Is kill. Yeah.
Yeah, it is kill. But I fucking adore Terraformer. It's my favorite Thank You Scientist. I absolutely adore that album. Some of my favorite tracks in the whole discography are on there. It just slams from start to finish. I mean, every track I absolutely love.
There's so much variety on this. Like, the intro to each track hooks you immediately. That's something that's really cool about this record. That my favorite is Maps of Non-Existent Places. I think Tones is as well. When we did the rankings, we both had that at number 1, and I think we both had this at number 2. But Terraformer is this album that it's really long, and I think Anthony mentioned if you have the LP of it, you flip it over and there's like a kind of a natural break. I can't remember where he said that was, but it is a really long album in the style of music, which is like it's progressive post-hardcore music, basically. I think we decided in like the vein of Coheed and Cambria, sort of.
Kind of though, because like
kind of with the jazz thing.
Yeah, there's a huge jazz element to this stuff too. Like the post-hardcore element comes through more from Sal's vocals, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Sometimes the guitar stuff, but like the everything but the vocals, it's like a fucking fusion band. They're just so ridiculously good.
This album is much jazzier than the previous two. The first album, I think, is much more straightforward. Even instrumentally, is much more like straightforward post-hardcore, but I agree. Like way more technical and yeah. But
this is filled with fusion, man. I mean, and then there's Chromology, which is just a fucking straight-ahead fusion track.
Yeah. Everyday Ghosts, which I get that little melody at the beginning stuck in my head all the time. Life of Vermin might be my favorite track they've done. I know it's like one of my top 5 most listened to songs on Spotify.
That's an awesome song.
That turns into a metal song at the end. There's like that breakdown that like the tempo just picks up at the very end. Like
there's some heavy shit in here, dude.
Yeah.
Life of Vermin, parts of the title track, Terraformer.
Yeah. New Moon into the title track is like one of the greatest moments in their discography.
There's some heavy shit in Chromology too.
Yeah.
I come back to Anchor a lot. Anchor's an awesome tune. I love the opener, Fox Mulder. Yeah, Terraformer, man, which is just an absolutely killer album. I love this stuff.
Yeah. Like I said, man, you listen to any of those tracks and there's a hook. It's like they kind of just launch you into a lot of the tracks, and like they have this really cool kind of distinct feel across the album, but it's all really unified too. And it's just, I mean, they're technical wizards, man. They're all really good at what they do. Great album.
Then next up, August 2019. I'm sure a lot of you will have heard this one. A lot of you were probably waiting for it for a long fucking time.
I wasn't waiting for it.
I also wasn't waiting for it, but we got Fear Inoculum by Tool, which honestly I did not re-listen to this in preparation for today, and I would have forgotten about it if you hadn't put it on the list.
I did forget about it until like 11 a.m. today. So
yeah,
I ran through my library and was like, is there anything I missed that we should maybe talk about? And like, obviously we have to talk about this coming out in 2019. It's such an important record, an important band. I am not the biggest Tool fan. I don't hate them. They're not even neutral to me. Like they're really good. Lateralis is awesome. I really like Lateralis.
Yeah, me too.
But it's not my favorite music, I guess. In this album, I imagine that if I was a Tool super fan, I would have been really pissed about it. That's my impression. But I'm not, and to me it was just, I don't know, it does this thing on a couple of these tracks, like Numa and Seven Tempest, I guess, are really good tracks, but there's these like in Descending, and it just like builds and builds and builds, and then the song's over, it feels like. And I know it's supposed to be this like brooding kind of psychedelic wave that it takes you on, and there doesn't have to be this big like catharsis at the end of the music, but it kind of just blue balls me, man.
I totally agree.
It kind of blue balls me, and the little electronic interludes, I felt I would maybe have felt, not that I have any right to, or that it should matter. It shouldn't matter to the band, but I might have felt a little insulted if I was like, why did they add like Chocolate Chip Trip or whatever? I'm just not a big fan of. But Tool's an incredibly important band, super influential. They're really influential in a lot of progressive rock and metal in the 2000s into the 2010s. Obviously, really good musicians. They kind of took the alt rock and made it technical and progressive, I guess, whatever that means. So yeah, I
Yeah,
figured we should add it on to here, but it just doesn't do a whole lot for me. I know Tone
it's like
likes
you
this more than I
said, man.
do.
I remember when I listened to this, just thinking like, it's like they're building this thing up. Like they build this shit up with no climax,
Yeah.
but not in a way that's particularly interesting. At least that was my read. I don't know. It did not do very much for me when it came out.
That's been my impression. To be
Maybe
fair,
there's something I'm missing, but I haven't.
yeah.
Since,
So I
since
was, I was thinking about. We'll talk about Wilderun here in a bit, but in listening to Wilderun's new album, it's kind of similar in a way that like the first track on that album is like an acoustic. It's really pretty and whatever, and then the next track it kind of builds, and then it just like drops you back down, and he's just singing like this soft vocal line, and there's like I don't know, it's kind of ambient. And it makes you wait for it. But at least in that album, I always felt that there was kind of a pick-me-up. It would like bring you back up, and there was a catharsis. But even with that album, there's I don't know, there's just not as much that would hook you as opposed to like Veil of Imagination, which we'll talk about in a bit. But like, so I'll leave it open. And to be fair, like I said, I'm not a huge Tool fan, so I don't really like just sit down and listen to them in my free time. Sometimes I'll put it on. So maybe I'm just missing something, and there's maybe more layers to it, and maybe I need to listen to it when I'm in a good headspace and like in my headphones and just sit down and just engage with the music. So I'll leave it open that I'm doing something wrong or just missed something, but that's been my impression of it. And yeah, I had forgotten about it till today.
Yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at with it too. But next up, one of my favorite bands from the last 20 years, Kayo Dot, put out Blasphemy in 2019. Which there was one more. There was Plastic House on Base of Sky in 2016, I think, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So it had been a few years since we had gotten a Kayo Dot. I really, really dig Blasphemy. It doesn't seem like it's gotten a whole lot of praise, but there are some fucking slappers on here, dude. The Something Opal is a killer track. Absolutely.
Turbine Hook and Hall is really good.
I was just going to say Turbine Hook and Hall, yep.
Yeah,
I mean, I pretty much trust Toby Driver to do whatever the hell he wants, man. And this is no exception. I think this is an awesome album.
That rating is really surprising.
Me too, yeah.
3.12 out of 5. It's so strange. I don't really want to spend time on why people don't like it, but that's the thing about Kayo Dot is every album is so different from the next. You listen to Choirs of the Eye, and then you go into, like, if you were to just jump from there and go into, like, Blue Lambency. Blue Lambency is, like, almost unlistenable at times, but it's so jarring for that reason, you know? But Choirs is much more, I don't know, it's much more palatable, but then you get some pretty easier, like, much, I don't know, it would be really weird to tell someone, if I want to get to Kayo Dot, where do I start? And you could say, well, the most accessible stuff is probably Coffins on Io and Plastic House, wouldn't you say? Like, that's the most accessible? And it's really not even that accessible.
Parts of it,
but
anyway, yeah.
Yeah, it'd be hard to say that though, because then if someone goes, okay, cool, I liked Coffins on Io, and they go listen to Blue Lambency, like, they don't really know what they're in for. Like, it's so different.
No, I mean, you've got to have an open mind for this music, man.
Yeah, you got to work with it, man. It makes you work for it, I think.
I totally agree. Yes, and I think
it's hard music.
And if you give the more accessible stuff that same level of attention, it's very rewarding. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Choirs is still my favorite. My favorite Kayo Dot, probably Choirs and then Hubardo.
I've got a special nostalgic attachment to Coffins, but
I also do love Coffins. I saw them on tour for Coffins.
Yeah,
I remember with Anthony both times actually. We saw him for Hubardo and then we saw him again for Coffins.
That's got to be Coffins is a cool. So that's basically a Blade. I mean, it's Blade Runner fanfic, right?
Yeah,
like that's the story it's based on.
Dude, they were so much fun to watch live too, man. Like that, it's a gigantic sound. It's kind of a shame, they play tiny little clubs because there's not a lot of reach for this music. And like we saw him at this shitty club in Richmond. It was like half like just a bar and half a venue. So up by the stage, we're all listening. We're watching a Kayo Dot set, like trying to absorb everything, and there's all these dumb motherfuckers chatting in the background.
Oh, disrespectful.
Which was a real bummer, but it was still really cool to see him. And
Well, I always mention this whenever we talk about Kayo Dot. I remember I met you at a party one time back in like 2015 or so, and shortly after this had come out, I think you told me to listen to them or something, and so I was like, yeah, okay, I put it on and loved Coffins, man. And then you had a shirt, a Kayo Dot shirt, and I was like, where do you get a Kayo Dot shirt? I can't find it. And you're like, at a Kayo Dot show.
At a Kayo Dot show.
So
exactly.
There you go. This music is not accessible at all. I think a lot of that has to do with Toby Driver messing around with John Zorn, right? Like the like New York City avant-garde scene kind of.
Yeah, I mean, Toby Driver's a New York avant-garde guy in his own right. But the Butt Choirs was his Zadok record back in 2003.
Right.
Kayo
and Plastic House kind of does the same thing.
Kayo Dot has a Discord server.
Dare we join that? I think it would be a terrible idea. What are Kayo Dot fans like? I don't know.
I only know 2 of them. Well, 3 of them. My wife also likes Kayo Dot.
Yeah.
No, I think Blasphemy is fucking badass, man. I don't know.
Blasphemy's great.
And the new one is really, really good. Yeah.
I prefer this one I prefer the new one to Blasphemy. There's some black metal stuff going on that. We hit that with the 5 out of 5, like right as it came out.
Yeah, Moskru on the Swords and Plowshares alike. That's a fucking killer album, dude.
Yeah, that's a stunning album, I think. Yeah, I don't really know when someone's listening. Like, how do you gamma knife at 3.1? Like, what is it that you're listening to that you're like, yeah, it just doesn't work. Like, the music's so difficult. I don't know. It just kind of, I don't know. It's weird music. I don't really know how. I don't know. It's supposed to kind of not work, but work. I don't know. It's strange to me, but yeah, Blasphemy's a great record. That was a nice. I don't know. They kept it interesting after the previous 2 albums, I thought.
Yeah, well, moving right along here, the last 6 albums all came out within the last 2 months of 2019. So that was a fucking run. We've got You Know What They Mean by Bent Knee in October. Probably my favorite Bent Knee record, actually.
I think
this one or Land Animal. I'm not sure.
Land Animal is that album is much prettier, more higher, like lifting. To me, it's a little more, it's like artsier, more cinematic. This album is like gritty and like, I don't know, gives the feel of a live show. They open with that like live set where they're messing with like their computers died or something, like that skit they do, which I guess that was just from a live show. Then moves into Bone Rage, but it feels like I don't know what's the go back to the track list there. I'm blanking on tracks, which I always do. I believe it's from Give Us the Gold and To Hold Me In. So at the end when Courtney the vocalist is like singing Give Us the Gold, and she's like kind of like freaking out like as she's singing this, and then the next track, so as it ends it drops off, but the next track like the drums kick in. You know what I'm talking about? And there's just like this transition that makes it really like visceral. And yeah, this was the album I was referring to earlier as I was like, this is, to me, was a game changer because it moved, because they were kind of in this, like they get lumped in with like the progressive rock stuff, which is kind of unfair to them because they're really hard to categorize, I think. And it sets them up with like really unfair expectations for what their music will be like in the future. Like their most recent album, Frosting, has like hyper pop on it, and it's it's much different than Land Animal or Shiny Eyed Babies or Say So or whatever, their previous albums. But I thought this one was cool and kind of like moving them away from like being associated with some of the like more progressive rock. Yeah, this band's just really hard to categorize. And yeah, to me, I said that this was going to be a game changer, and I stand by that. I think, to me, Bent Knee is maybe one of the most refreshing and interesting and novel bands to have come out in the last 20 years or so, I would say.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I've seen them twice, actually. Once, the first time I saw them was actually the first time I ever heard them. It was in 2018 with Tone, actually. He was out here in Denver, and we caught them at a club here in the city. And then I saw them again touring, actually, for You Know What They Mean with Thank You Scientist and the T Club. And what's so cool about Bent Knee is the way that they present the music to you in a live performance. Like all of the production that you get on the album, they do all that live too. They've got a producer on stage with them who's making it sound the right way and making it sound full. And I really appreciate that attention to detail because it has so much to do with the quality of their stuff. Like if it was just instruments plugged in straight ahead and just playing the songs, it wouldn't work, or at least it wouldn't work as well. Like there's so much going on in the atmosphere that makes Bent Knee so good.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many layers to the music. There's just ambient stuff, and there's like Courtney's I mean, I think she's one of the greatest vocalists doing it right now. She's got her range is insane. Like
she's badass.
Yeah, some of the notes she's able to hit, but she also has this really nasty kind of like grit to her vocals too in some cases, which is
sometimes
really, Ben Levin might be a musical genius. It's possible.
For
some of the compositional stuff he does. I know all of his influences, like his the kind of like more hyper pop kind of stuff. And I'm sure I'm sure the whole band listens to that, their influences they bring them to bear on this. But if you listen to some of Ben Levin's solo stuff, you can see that
our sax player Miles has actually played with Bent Knee.
Really?
Yeah, he played a couple tunes with them when they were in the Mountain West. I want to say it was like Idaho, Montana. They were playing together.
Interesting.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, this is a killer album. I probably wouldn't. I'd recommend starting with Say So or Land Animal if you want to get into Bent Knee. But have you heard Say So?
I have, but I don't remember it as well as I remember as well as I know Land Animal.
Yeah, give it another shot. Next time I need to put on some Bent Knee, put that one on instead of Land Animal or something, and it's in that similar vein. It's really good. But yeah, this band is really inventive and interesting and really fresh, I think, and they continue to be fresh. And I'm glad they did the pop record. I know people were really mad about it, but I'm glad they did that. I don't know, that's a band that seems like it's forced to evolve and change its sound. I don't know. I would hate for them to just get bogged down in one style.
I agree. They seem pretty unstoppable right now. I think that's a group to watch out for.
Yeah.
Next up, we get some more old timers at this point. Shit. I mean, up there with Dream Theater anyway.
Before
Resistance
Dream Theater.
by IQ. Yeah, before Dream Theater, technically.
Resistance
by
IQ. On the list. Which we didn't hear till recently.
Yeah, I think both of us had not really gone deep on IQ until 3 or 4 months ago.
Yeah, it had to have been. It was right before Christmas. I was listening to them in November, December.
Yeah.
I don't know what. I think part of it was the whole Empath on Prog Archives thing. Not like we scroll down. We used to meme about it all the time. We're like, how the fuck is it 50 out of whatever for 2019? And then fucking Resistance, whatever. And I know this is an aggregator, but still, I mean, people are inputting their opinions. I do think Prog Archives skews towards neo-prog, but in this case, in a lot of cases with neo-prog, no, it was well deserved. This band, we did the neo-prog episode recently and talked about Ever, which was kind of when the band, I guess, reformed, and it's kind of in some ways as their first album under this with this lineup or whatever, with Nichols on the vocals and stuff. And so to me, this is a group that somehow just has existed since the early 80s and just gotten better as they've gone along. I thought they peaked with The Road of Bones, which was sonically very different from their 90s stuff and early 2000s stuff, like Dark Matter. But then you get this album, which is kind of a return that's a little softer than Road of Bones. But it's still got some of that punchiness to it, which they've had that the punchy bass riffs that they do. And Nichols is an absolute phenomenal vocalist, and
this is great sounding stuff too. The production on their stuff is phenomenal.
Yeah, I was really I was happy that I gave it its due, and I've been a fan of IQ, I guess, for a couple months now. But yeah, I'm glad I finally went back into the deep dive. It was a little, it was hard. It was slow goings at first. Some of that earlier stuff is not my cup of tea.
Yeah,
but
the 80s IQ is not my favorite.
yeah, the Wake's cool, but other than that, they get it going with Ever, and
Yeah.
basically every album after that has been really good. Yeah, Frequency's really good.
Yeah, I mean, I hope we
Yeah,
see
so
more
well
from
deserved.
IQ.
Yeah,
Yeah, for sure, man. That's a big old discography at this point.
it's what early? I forget when their first they had that like
First album's like mid 80s.
yeah, well they have that like EP they did. So they used to record like Christmas music, like at their live shows and stuff. They played like Christmas tunes.
It's actually
And they have
early
that. I think
80s.
it's 7 Stories into 8. Yeah, that first one. So
Yeah, 82.
yeah, the recording quality is ass.
Yes.
And I was listening on YouTube and it was even more ass, but it was really cool. Yeah, it was really cool to watch that development. And you get Roto Bones, man. I prefer Roto Bones to Resistance, but I still think Resistance is a top 2 record. I think Tone says something insane like Resistance is by far better than Empath, which is that's crazy as hell, but it is really good.
Yeah, I mean, I barely know how to make sense of that claim. But all right, another October, one more here. We got Pitfalls by Leprous, October 2019. Leprous, I think we talked about this recently, but I had really not gone deep on Leprous until somewhat recently too. I think it was when we did the first run of Prog Metal 2010s.
Yeah, we
I
lost
went
the
through
first
all of their
recording of it.
stuff. Yeah.
Oh no, we didn't lose the first recording of it. It just sucked.
Yeah.
Well, the new one probably sucks too because we're the ones doing it, but it sucked by our standards. Yeah.
Yes,
So it's
exactly.
really bad. Yeah.
So I probably didn't go deep on Leprous till like 6 months ago. But God, what a rich discography, man. And I think you pointed out that there's sort of a big change in style here on Pitfalls that, of course, people bitched about as they're wont to.
Yeah, I think the style. I mean, I don't know why people were surprised. There is this kind of they start with Top Poppy Syndrome and Bilateral, which are much more like closer in like the symphonic prog tradition, and then you get Cole, which is its own thing and it's this kind of transitional album. Then you get Congregation, which is a little bit softer. They bring on Bard Coldstad, and it's really like more rhythmically focused and more of this like droning minimalistic like runs that they go on throughout the songs. They do that on Cole as well, much less on the first 2 albums. And then you get Melina, which becomes this much more like alt rock, pop rock album, but still characteristically Leprous. And then on this album, it's I know you don't like the term, but I just to give up to like fix the reference of it, it's much closer to like art pop kind of in art rock than it is to progressive rock. We included Cole because I think that is a progressive rock, but it's like here one of the genres is art pop, and like the guitars just aren't like they're not very prevalent in the mix. They're not really used that much other than some rhythms and for some like ambience, in the tracks. It's really Einar with the vocals kind of carrying the music, and then the keys and like the spaciness of the album, and then Bard just like driving the rhythms. But yeah, this sounds much softer in tone until you get the last 2 tracks, Foreigner, which is much more of a maybe more classic Leprous song, and then The Sky is Red, which in my opinion is maybe the best track they've ever released.
That's a killer tune, The Sky is Red.
That is that came out at that was another like, don't know how difficult time in my life that track was. I have a really big nostalgic attachment to that track, and it's probably my most listened to track that year. It's probably my favorite track of the year.
Yeah, that's a sick track.
I also saw your the face you made when you clicked on art rock. I take it you did not like the bands that got listed as art rock, or it didn't make sense to you?
It doesn't make any sense. I just think that's a nebulous genre.
Yeah, to me, it's more of a. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really know. I can't really give you a
Like,
definition of art rock. I
like
feel
what
like
does
I
that
have
mean?
a.
Does that mean that the band made the music to be good? Like what
Well,
the fuck
I would
does
hope
that
that all of them
mean?
do that, yeah.
Uh,
I have this, I feel like I have this really naive, um, I'm working with this really naive conception of art rock that I know how to use it, you know, but I can't give you like an analytical definition. And yeah, I don't know. That's I'm at like there's like a really low grade of clarity when I use the word, but I know what bands I'm talking about, and I could give you a bunch of them if you ask me, oh, what's a good art rock band to
yeah,
listen to or something.
I don't know. I'm skeptical. I'm skeptical about genre in general, but I think there are some genre descriptors that are particularly nebulous.
What do you mean
Art is one.
you
Art
don't
is one of them. Experimental is another one, which we talked about in a recent episode.
are you
Avant-garde is another one that I think is
well they
kind of
yeah I
nebulous.
mean they might all mean the same thing too, possibly.
Yeah, maybe.
Avant-garde's more of a that's a much more of a like that grew up in like visual art. That was like a philosophical movement
Right.
um in the early and mid 20th century, and it was also attached to politics, so that was another.
Yes.
So I think that one's clearer than progressive. I mean, progressive rock is probably relative to a time period like we've talked about.
Yeah.
Art rock might just be a negative concept where we just don't know how to classify it amongst other like contemporary artists, right? Same with experimental. Just like trying to, we don't have to give it a label. I mean, just music that tries to push the boundaries of like the standard genre format.
Yeah. I don't know.
And like whether they're consciously doing it or not, like the music
Yeah.
itself
Yeah.
is doing that. Yeah.
But honestly, the more music I listen to in more styles, the more skeptical I am of genre. The blurrier the boundaries become, I think.
Um, I think that might be true for the music we listen to because we listen to music. The music we're most familiar with, I think. I mean, your favorite artist Frank Zappa, and that dude's drawing from all sorts of traditions, from working with all different kinds of musicians from different backgrounds and things, right? So you talk about a thing like genre bending, um, but I mean, Waylon Jennings is obviously very different than Freddie Gibbs,
Yes.
who's obviously very
Yes.
different from Emperor,
Yep.
right?
Yep. No,
So there are clear
I hear you.
examples.
Yes.
So there definitely are genres, but it's totally fine if there's fuzzy boundaries. Like we don't need to give nature's fuzzy. I mean, there are
Yeah.
natural kinds, but there's like intermediate cases that aren't easily classifiable. Maybe it'd be impossible to classify, but that doesn't mean that. So
You're
it's
right.
a case like
Yeah,
this.
you're
It's
right.
like with Bent Knee, like we just said. You know, it's really hard music to classify, but you hear the influences, and at bottom, like the ground for this music for Leprous is rock. I mean, that's the ground for this music, even though it's poppy and um. But what's maybe I think maybe when people talk about art rock or experimental, it's actually pointing to that fuzziness in the music. That's probably what's happening.
I think you're probably right. Either way, though, Leprous, man, another band just to watch out for. They're scary good.
Every album they put out is great. Yeah,
Yes,
I think.
totally agree. All right, a couple more legends here in November 2019. First, we've got "Waiting for Miracles" by Flower Kings. This is one I actually haven't given a ton of attention to relative to their earlier stuff, but Flower Kings don't put out bad albums, man.
No, they don't. They're machines too. Royna's a machine.
Oh my god, dude, Royna is a fucking genius.
You know, when we did a transatlantic episode, which I believe we had that one up.
Yeah, I think we do.
I think I mentioned how much of a maniac Mike Portnoy is. But Royna definitely matches him in that like prolific musical output, and
Oh god, yeah.
nothing he does is still. Now, for context, the album or the band that I deep dove right before IQ was the Flower Kings. So before that, I went through the entire Flower Kings discog, which there were a couple albums in the discog, actually quite a few that I hadn't heard. There were some that I had listened to religiously, and others that I'd listened to in passing. And of course, this had just recently come out, so I like you. I didn't have as much time to sit down with this one until I did the deep dive. And it's kind of like, so we get this album, and then there's Islands, which came out the very next year, and then we just got By Royal Decree, it came out this year, and then of course there's the Transatlantic album. That's probably the reason he didn't release an album in 2021, as we had the Transatlantic record last year, or was that in 2020? No, I think it was in.
It was 2021. It was February of last year.
Yeah, so long ago. So and he's putting out, and all these albums are like an hour and a half to 2 hours long.
Oh yeah, they're always long.
Yeah, so he's got his stuff down, and like he's got such a like there's emblematic Flower Kings, like Royna Stolt when you hear him play a solo or when you hear him play a riff or something like that. Like he's got his own voice with the instrument, and it's unmistakably Royna. And yeah, I mean, to me these latest albums, they're just really good, but I don't know how to say this without like, it's like the new Meshuggah album. It's just like quintessential Meshuggah, and in that way it can't be bad, but at some levels I'm just not as excited by it. Does that make sense? Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, sure.
I like the new Meshuggah album, I really do. Like Immutable's cool as fuck, it's groovy, but it's just like so like platonically that band that it's kind of harder to get excited about than some of the earlier stuff, I guess.
I totally understand that. I mean,
I'm gonna say in the most positive way possible. It's really hard to like make that kind of criticism without sounding like you're trashing the band or something.
No, I understand what you mean.
Yeah, that's how I feel about Waiting for Miracles. Damn good. Love to put it on. If it's on, I'm gonna have a great time listening to it.
Exactly.
Not my favorite though. Like
no, I totally agree. You couldn't put on Flower Kings without me loving it. Like I pretty much love all their stuff, but there are albums I return to more often than others.
Yeah, like I don't vision myself wanting to listen to the Rainmaker a bunch.
Yeah, I go back to Stardust We Are, Flower Power,
Space
Unfold
Revolver.
the Future.
Yeah, Paradox Hotel's awesome.
Love Paradox Hotel.
Might be my favorite.
Love Paradox Hotel.
Yeah.
I love Royna's music in general, man. Royna is wonderful. I love his stuff. Love his playing. I love his compositional style. Like Royna has a way of making the complex very appealing.
And it's really bright and positive too.
Yes.
He doesn't write a lot of sad music, I don't think.
Yep. I agree.
It's like Morning News from Islands. That's just such a happy like.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like a happy little track.
Basically, Royna is like my kind of hippie.
Yeah.
He's like a hippie with ambition.
Yeah. No, obviously incredibly industrious.
Yeah.
Like, the guy's, he's prolific. And it doesn't surprise me that he and Portnoy were the ones who wanted to put out the extended version of, like, no, we have 2 hours of music, we're going to put out a 2-hour album, They're insistent on it. And then Pete T and Neo are like, maybe we should cut some of this, it's kind of long. And of course, the thing about Transatlantic and the Flower Kings is, for the most part, if you're listening to it, paying money for it, going to see them, whatever, you're like selected for as a person who likes that longer composition. So I think it skews toward that, but that's just Royna's style. I think. I don't think it's. I never get the feeling that he's being overindulgent or anything. Like he's just got so much to say. He's
got a lot to say. Exactly. Yeah. The joke I tell is that the Flower Kings it's like if jam bands were good.
We just lost a huge bit of our audience.
I can hear the screech. I can hear the screeching already.
All 3 people, 2 of them just left.
I'm like, I don't know, a quarter kidding, but
no, he does not like jam band music, and that's okay. I'm not a huge fan of jam band stuff, but
there are good jam bands. The tropes of jam band music are not my favorite.
I'm wondering if you're doing that thing that we had that whole thing about Modest Mouse, where you're like thinking about the people who like it and the people who.
It's the music itself, dude. Like the 4 on the floor fucking crescendo, over and over and over again that jam bands do in their concerts.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've heard that a lot. I've heard enough of it. Please.
Yeah, it's probably a fun thing for the artists, and I bet it's fun to just go up and jam with your friends and stuff.
Yeah,
like, that's cool. But
sure.
I don't need to listen to all of it.
Exactly.
I'm with you.
I don't mean to like shit on them. I don't particularly care, but it's one of those things where it's like people expect me to really like that stuff, and it's never been my favorite.
Yeah, like the Beatles. I don't need to like it as much as everyone else.
That's a whole other episode. One
I just
which
lost
I'd
the
like
last
to have.
remaining fan we
Yeah.
had.
I mean, I think fucking Scarufi. I think he's basically got the Beatles figured, but that's an unpopular opinion.
It is a very unpopular opinion.
Speaking
you
of
can't
unpopular
criticize
opinions,
that band at all without people thinking that you're accusing them of like
pretty much
they suck.
If you have any criticism of the Beatles, you're immediately sidelined as a contrarian.
Yeah, you're written off. Like, what do you mean? Yeah. Because they're
Speaking,
responsible for literally every branch of music that exists.
Right, exactly. They're responsible,
and some of them that existed before the Beatles even existed.
They exert backwards causation. It's actually,
they're responsible for John Coltrane, Otis Redding,
Yep,
Etta James. Yeah, they're responsible for all of that.
It's amazing. They're aliens.
Yeah. I hear all of the Beatles' influence on Wu-Tang Clan and and a lot of black metal. It's
you hear the Beatles.
apparent.
You hear the Beatles in "Walk a Flock of Flame."
And,
and Stitches. I hear lots of Beatles and Stitches.
Yeah, some random bluegrass band I can hear back home. Yeah, they definitely influence.
There's actually lots of. I definitely see Beatles in bluegrass, like that style of songwriting is it's more like there's bluegrass and Beatles.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I think it's it's a common source probably. Yeah. I don't know how much bluegrass people are listening to the Beatles like that to be influenced by them. Well, Beatles are a great band. I like. Yeah, if anyone's listening,
now
Beatles are. I like.
Now that we've pissed off whoever the fuck was listening to this in the first place, let's have some more unpopular opinions here, and praise post Death Growl Opeth.
Oh yes.
Going to talk about Cauda Venenum from November 2019, another just phenomenal Opeth release. I love post Death Growl Opeth, New Peth, as we might call them, New Peth versus Old Peth. I'm a big New Peth fan, and this is tied for my favorite of the New Peth stuff.
This is Steven Wilson's Opeth. I think people have accused Steven Wilson of having a malign influence on the direction of Opeth's music, which is insane. I feel like, I don't know, Michael Eckerfeld is another musician who just has so much to say, and I'd hate to box him in and like, you need to keep growling, you need to keep making this like bleak, symphonic death metal.
Dude, I want Michael to make whatever the fuck Michael wants to make.
Yes.
Like, dude, just do your thing. I will buy it. That's pretty much how I feel about Opeth.
Dude, some of his influences are like really cool to like. I mean, obviously he's like a huge Ian Anderson fan, so you get all like the folksier stuff. I listened to Heritage today.
Love Heritage.
That's an overlooked album, man. I've for so
Heritage.
long, like even like someone who likes the new Opeth stuff, like I went back and was like, wow, I even slept on that one. Like it's really folksy and dark and
it's very dark. Yeah, very dark.
Yeah.
Very kind of bizarre. There's some bizarre shit on Heritage.
Yeah, Hake's Process is a really weird song. Slither's a really weird song.
Also, some of the best. That's like the best drum sound ever on Heritage. Mm-hmm. The drums sound fucking incredible on Heritage.
They really do. They really do. I think they sound great on Pale Communion as well.
Yes.
I think the keyboard sounds even. Maybe it's like the second.
Pale Communion is just much more subdued, though. Like I love Pale Communion. That's my favorite of the New Peth stuff, but. Yeah, the style is just obviously more subdued. And then in Cauda Venenum, I think, is sort of following in the footsteps of Pale Communion. Like there, obviously there's still a lot of the rock forward stuff we see on Sorceress, but I think it's a kind of a nice blend of the two.
Yeah, I think this album's much softer than Sorceress. Like maybe less very.
Yeah, Sorceress is very rock forward.
Yeah, bluesy too, like Strange Brew.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's some really bluesy moments. The title track's actually pretty bluesy. I think in certain places. Wildflowers is that's another one. But yeah, this one I think is much more like much more pared down, I guess, compared to the previous three records or something. And so I managed to have this unpopular opinion, even within the scope of the unpopular opinion that New Peth is good. That I like Sorceress more than this album, and we've argued about this
I
Yeah,
definitely prefer
and
this to Sorceress.
we've also argued that Sorceress to me is like that is a Halloween album. Like that's the to me the and you claim that this one's more Halloween
Bitch,
than
the
Sorceress.
cover of this album
just...
is orange. Like, I don't even know how. I don't know how you're going to make that argument, man.
Because there's a peacock holding a blood-soaked skull with a snake.
Like, it's spooky, but this album is more ghostly. This is the Halloween Opeth album.
Like Sorceress is like the evil witch, like hiding in the forest, and like all her like the strange brew man. It's like all this like creepy shit, black magic she's doing in the recess of some shaded hollow.
This is a stupid argument, but I definitely disagree.
This is what the people want.
This is a stupid argument, but I disagree with you strongly.
You're just fucking wrong, man.
Both
are great Halloween albums.
Real quick, we have to talk about this too: Swedish or English.
Swedish.
I wish this is much better in Swedish. I kind of wish they wouldn't have released the English version. Like,
I think it was all written in Swedish.
Yeah, I get it, because you want people to be able to appreciate the lyrics. You want the lyrics to get out there for people to to understand them and appreciate the depth. But I like the Swedish just sounds right. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So one of the coolest things I've ever heard anyone say was that what that kid says in the intro track at the very end. I'm gonna butcher this. It's something like "Oman ter sluta tänka dad." You know what I'm talking about? Like the very end.
Yeah.
And I looked up the translation, and it means if you stop thinking, you die. It's like at the beginning. It's like one of the coolest things I've ever heard anyone say. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, my grandmother actually was Swedish. Like she moved to the United States in 1950 from Sweden. She was from northern Sweden too, way north of Stockholm.
Wow.
And not that I'm going to show my grandmother an Opeth album, but I think that it would have been really cool for her to listen to it, just to understand the language and be able to talk about it. But
I wish Opeth had done more albums in Swedish. If I'm being honest,
they still could. I think they're recording something right now.
Oh, that'd be great. Well, it's been it'll be 3 years in November, so they're right in that cycle, I think.
Oh, that's right. Axelrod left. So
yeah, he did.
I guess we don't really know what's coming, but I would expect something new, somewhat soon, I guess.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah.
So now, last album on the list. This is actually sort of a natural progression. We've got "Veil of Imagination" by Wilderun, which I had not heard until last year. But dude, this is a sick album. For those people who do miss the Death Growl Opeth, Old Peth, fucking check out Wilderun, man. This will help to fill that hole for you, I think. This is a phenomenal album. I can't wait to keep up with these guys. I think they're going to do.
Have you listened to Epigon?
Yeah. I listened to it when it came out. I haven't listened to it 372 times like you have, but
that's probably going to be my album of the year, and it was released 7 days into 2022.
Yeah, no, it was awesome though. It's definitely very good.
I watched an interview with one of the band members recently. He was on a podcast. He's on a podcast. Some guy invited him on there. He's like talking about
that's cool.
Epigon, and yeah, it's really highly acclaimed.
This is the highest rated album of that year on our list. Actually, this is number 36 for the year.
Yeah, it's wild.
Good for them, dude. That's fucking awesome.
And of course they have like 2 albums before this, which
35 for the year.
Yeah, it's wild.
Well done.
Yeah, they have 2 albums prior to this. And yeah, I guess what's so cool about it is it's obviously like I would not be surprised. I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say, but like I wouldn't be surprised if Opeth has. I mean, yeah, you see, everyone mentions Opeth when you talk about this band. But they've got their own sound. They're not derivatives of Opeth in that way. They've got the spoken word stuff. It's much brighter. It's not as bleak. It's got that like I don't know. Who was the example Anthony gave one time? It's like it has that like pirate quality to it, like or like I don't know, warrior bellowing kind of like power metal kind of thing going on. Yeah, it's not as dark as Opeth, and that's something that I think is really cool about it. Obviously, very technically proficient guys. The vocalist is absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, and I'm sitting here looking at the Rate Your Music page. There is so one of the genres listed is symphonic metal. There's definitely a heavy symphonic element to this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
There's like this. It sounds like a Soviet chorus that's on a lot of these songs. It sounds like a fucking like
Soviet national anthem.
Yeah, late 20th century Soviet march. I don't know why that's what it sounds like to me, but it is. And
I always just assumed it was like pirates or either pirates or Vikings. That's like Odin's like war cry or something. So I'm trying to look at I'm thinking. So I think The Sky Is Red is my favorite closing record of our closing track of any of these
When
albums.
the Fire and the Rose Were One is fucking sick though.
It's really good. It's really good. I still think Sky's Red is my favorite, but opening track, The Unimaginable Zero Summer, stacking that up to Reptile, and go back to the album list here. Let me think here. So,
back to the album list.
Our spreadsheet. Yeah. I'm trying to think. Is there any? Would I take any of the other? I mean, Genesis on Empath is awesome. I love that track. So that's one of my most listened to tracks, I think, of all time, probably. No, I would say The Unimaginable Zero Summer might be the best opener of any of these.
My favorite opener
it starts
on this
with
list is Reptile. Favorite closer.
Yeah, I mean, Reptile's great. But Unimaginable Zero Summer, the way they, the progression of that song is insane. It starts with the spoken word, and then that kind of creepy acoustic riff starts, and then it builds up, and the chorus comes in. And then it's just, basically, I don't know, tremolo picking almost. It's just really fast, and the blast beats start. The guitar comes in, plays that nice melodic riff, and then that really punchy rhythmic part starts. You know what I'm talking about? Mm-hmm. Dum, 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 dum. And then it the growls come in, and they use those so sparingly, which to me, I don't know, it makes me yearn for those more really intense moments on the album. So it's that way they build up tension on this album and then just release it with those screaming vocals or with the guitar solo or the bellowing or whatever. It's masterful, man. And this is, I think everyone was surprised because the previous two albums are really good and I enjoy them, but it was, I don't know, it's it was just a masterpiece out of nowhere, and not many people had heard of Wilderun, I don't think, until this one came out. And so I was really pumped when they released Epigon. I mean, I gave that a 5 out of 5. Like I said, I think it's probably going to be my album of the year. But it's much subtler and more tender and emotional, I think, than this one. And I think that's probably one that would take a few more listens for some.
Yeah, this one's very rich, very very full.
Yeah. The other one's much more somber. And relaxed, chilled out, I think. Until Nola, the last suite on the album. There's some heavy moments, and they scream on the new one. Yeah. But this is a banger of an album. This was I think I'd heard of all. So like I said, IQ is the only one I didn't hear as it came out in 2019. But this was definitely my favorite band that I discovered that year. I had heard all of the other bands we had talked about, artists we had talked about before, and so this is the only one on this list that I had heard in 2019, but I hadn't heard prior to 2019.
I've said this a lot this episode. I had no clue where they came from. I've said this a lot this episode, but I think Wilderun is another one of these bands just to keep an eye on. They're gonna keep putting out amazing shit.
Yeah, they're pretty young, so they've definitely, you hope, have a lot more in them. Wish them the best of luck. I hope they keep putting out bangers, man.
Yeah, another Boston band.
That's true. That's true.
Bent Knee.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah, 2019 though. Good God, what a year. There's other stuff from that year too, though. I mean, Swans put out an album in 2019.
Oh, I forgot to put the Swans album. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. I'm not as big a Swan fan. I mean, I don't dislike them. I just haven't given them the due. Given Swans the due.
2019 Swans album was, I don't know. It's not. I don't love it as much as I love The Seer, To Be Kind, and The Glowing Man, and then the '90s stuff too. Soundtracks from the Blind, or Soundtracks for the Blind. But
well, some other highlights. I think we should just mention these. I know you haven't heard. I guess the vast majority of the rest of these, or haven't heard any of the other ones.
The majority of them.
Yeah, just it's I don't want to name every single one of these. Maybe I can put this on the Twitter, like give like screenshot it or something. But Schlagenheim by Black Midi, who I didn't hear until last year with their last album Cavalcade. But that's an awesome one. Jordan Rudess, Wired for Madness, which is a fun little Jordan Rudess project where he gets to indulge in all his eccentricities. The Great Adventure is a great Neil Morse Band record. I love the Barak Project album. I didn't like it as much as Detachment, but Seven Seas was really good. Mordial by Carbomb. You haven't heard Carbomb, right?
Nope.
They are insane. They're like math metal, like influenced by Meshuggah, just crazy polymetric changes and stuff. Like, yeah, crazy. Dawn to Fear by Cult of Luna is another one to mention. Spectrum by Hiromi, Hiromi's Sonic Bloom. Great, like, third stream kind of jazz, classically trained pianist. That album's amazing. I in the Morning, kind of a similar vein. Gleb Kolyadin, his group. Love You to Bits by No Man, so Steve Wilson and Tim Bonas. Oh yeah, so that's a great little like kind of disco-y kind of pop record. Tales from Outer Space was really highly rated by me by RPWL, which is I think they're from Germany, but they're a continental neo-prog band. Let's see what else is good from here. The Claypool Lennon Delirium, that South of Reality song. That's actually what got me thinking about the Beatles and like their influence, because I actually heard the Beatles' influence on the Claypool Lennon Delirium, that album. But then I thought that's just kind of what prompted me to think about it. So, there's a lot of good stuff. We probably could share this at some point, just like a good like roundup of progressive music from 2019. But absolute banger of a year. I heard a good bit of those in 2019, but a lot of those I found later, like A Formal Horse, Here Comes the Man from Council with a Flamethrower. That band is cool as fuck. They had an album that was their album from last year. Meat Mallet was one of my favorites. So it's another band I think is kind of a game changer. Really cool. They're kind of like a UK version of Bentley in a way.
Yeah, I'll get around to all these albums, I don't know, in 20 years or so.
Yeah, I highly recommend it.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to rank these things.
I'm not ranking all these fucking things. Empath's my favorite. Empath's my favorite. That's easy.
Yeah, pick a top three. So, yeah, I would say Empath, Bentley, and Wilderun probably would be my top three from that year. Of the ones we talked about.
I would say Empath, Terraformer, Veil of Imagination. 1, 2, 3.
Nice. Yeah, it's hard to ignore. I thought, to me...
Top 5 would include You Know What They Mean and probably Periphery 4.
Yeah, I would probably put Periphery just because I'm a fanboy.
Yep.
And either Leprous or Opeth, probably, because I'm a fanboy. I don't know what to say. Tool is probably my least favorite of all these albums. Fear Inoculum is probably my least favorite of the ones we talked about. I don't even know if it'd be in my top 25 for the year, honestly. Yeah. Sad to say.
Yeah, that's a hell of a retrospective, though.
Yeah, it's a fun year, man.
Fun year for sure.
I think, this is pretty fun. I think we could also do 2016 and 2014 at some point. Those are also 2 years that we've kind of like singled out as really good years for. I at least discovered a shit ton of stuff from 2014. Our Raw Beefs, I think 2014 is the most common year.
We had 3 albums from 2014 on the Prog Metal 2010s episode.
We did, yeah, exactly. And I think we've all picked.
In retrospect, we ought to have considered Veil of Imagination for that list, for that starter pack.
I think we did. I don't know that I'd put Wilderun as a starter pack for prog metal in that era, though. Yeah. It doesn't, you know what I mean? Like as a starter pack, it's one of my favorite from the 2010s.
Yeah, I hear you. I do hear you.
Yeah, I don't know.
But yeah, that was interesting. Maybe if this turns out to have been decent when we listen back to it, we'll do some more retrospectives. We're already doing these Rate Your Music top 5s for certain years, but this more just kind of all-encompassing thing was pretty fun. So
yeah, well, and it fits more with our like tastes and the stuff we know better. Because this next one we're doing, I'm gonna have to sit down with those albums.
Fucking stand by, devoted fans for an interesting upcoming episode.
Yeah, I don't really know how I'm gonna talk about it. We'll see what happens. It'll be fun.
Yeah.